Hello and welcome to the Xenogenesis podcast. My name is Richard Akin, and in this episode 31, we are covering chapters 1 and 2 of Part 2 Phoenix of Book 2 Adulthood-Rites of the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia Butler. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host,
Michael Glinka. Hello, everyone. You did a beautiful, smooth intro. It was really nice. I enjoyed that. That was one breath.
Yep. And I mean, the titles are quite complicated.
No, honestly, like full-on admiration of at least this part is called Low. Phoenix. Low was the previous one, yeah. But the next one is a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Is it Xenogenesis or something like that? The unpronounceable one? I can't remember.
If I have to pronounce it, I'm gonna kill myself. Gee.
We'll see. Yeah, it looks almost like Maya or Inca or one of Aztec or something like that. One of those weird, like lots of X's and stuff.
Actually, question. That speaking of, do we know on what languages did Octavia Butler base her Oankali language on?
I don't know. I mean, we never really get a sort of spoken or written Oankali like represented explicitly in the book. It's always just translated into English, right? So I don't know if we have any detailed linguistic underpinnings of what that's supposed to be. But
just considering the fact that, just from the writer's perspective, right? She had to base the language on something, like the certain words on, the full names of for example, Nikan and stuff like that. And we all have that. So we do have some basis of certain languages maybe being an inspiration. I just was curious if you would know maybe if this...
That's a good question.
So maybe we can look into it for the next episode, to see what the potential language is.
I mean, I know she did actually travel to South America when she was researching for the I think for the second two books. So she kind of went to the jungle to do it. I think used some of the MacArthur Fellowship funds to go.
Okay.
But I don't know any more details than that. So.
Yep. We'll definitely investigate for the next for the next recording, but I probably will also check the references for this one just to jumpstart the episode.
Yeah, occasionally if we miss stuff in the episode, it goes in the references.
Yes, just for everyone, FYI.
Yeah, occasionally serve as minor corrections.
Now, I wanted to start the episode with predictions, but I thought that because we had a small conversation before the episode, and I think it needs to be it has to be on a recording because I still am in awe of Richard's knowledge, of intricate knowledge of certain aspects. So could you please give us some feedback, some intro to what we were discussing?
I mean, so there's a vague connection to previous stuff we've discussed on the podcast, because I think the Harris Hawk at some point came up before, and I cannot remember in which context. But so the reason this came up again, the Harris Hawk, is because I last week sometime I watched the first episode of a TV show called The Last Kingdom, based on some novels by Bernard Cornwell, and it's quite popular these days. But in the opening shot of this TV series, there's a guy with a Harris Hawk on his arm. And it flies around and makes very Harris Hawk sounding noises and has very clearly Harris Hawk plumage. They have this distinctive white tips on their tail, right? It's definitely a Harris Hawk. But
go on.
And this show is like, so the guy's name is Uhtred, and he's in Northumbria at Bamborough Castle, and so there was an Uhtred at Northumbria in Bamborough just after 1000 AD, right?
Yes.
Right. So that's the rough timeline. Although actually later in the show, I think they mention they're going to talk to like an army of King Ethelwulf of Wessex, which would mean it would have to be before 871, when Alfred the Great succeeded Ethelwulf to the throne of Wessex. So the timeline's not quite, there's like 100 years and a bit around, but it's definitely like before, around about 1000 AD and possibly in the 900s, right?
So it's just before William the Conqueror coming to England.
Yeah, before the Norman Conquest.
Okay.
Right. and which means it's definitely before any opportunity for a Harris hawk, which are natives of South America and are pack hunters, which I think was the context in which they came up before, right? They're great falconry birds because they have social. They take social cues very well, so they can be trained well because they're used to working in groups.
Okay.
So I think, I mentioned this in the context of like better and worse animals for domestication. I think that was where this came up before. And the Harris hawk was an example of an animal that was very effective as a domesticated bird because it has this natural pattern of hunting in packs, right? But yeah, I mean, so this threw me out of the initial frame of the episode for several minutes while I was like, is that a Harris? That's definitely a Harris hawk. Kind of looked back over the footage again, and I was like, then I sort of did a little bit of checking to double check my facts on this. I was like, yes, that definitely could not possibly have been in at this point in time in the show. So I was like, this is one of the things where it's like, get the little minor details right.
So I am in full admiration of you knowing that, like, seeing a scene that in those at the times 900 or the 10th century, there shouldn't be any Harris hawks because there shouldn't be. They were later, and you noticed that. Wow. Well done.
But I mean, like, if you happen to know that, then it upsets the immersion, right? It's like I was saying it's the same kind of thing that you get with like the canonical example of this is when Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted about the sky over the scene in Titanic when they have the night sky above the sinking ship. And it was like, this is the wrong sky, right? The sky would not have looked like that at this time in 1912, right? Whatever it was. I can't remember what the date was, but yeah, it's like you could have computed the correct sky. It wouldn't have been hard. It's like, here, look, this is what it was supposed to look like, and send it to James Cameron.
Oh my dear Lord! Like, but you know,
and then in the remastered version, it now has the right sky.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I need to say, honestly, this details like this really, I love listening to people when they find those little details like that. For me, it's just beautiful that, like, this little random knowledge, well, not random, Neil deGrasse Tyson has a lot of, astrophysics degree, and, he is the physics, astrophysics guy. But, like when people have this interesting knowledge about something, and then it appears somewhere, and it just, like, touches them the wrong way, they're like, this is wrong, and it's just beautiful to listen. I love it.
I mean, the thing that irks us pedants, right, is when it's like, it's easy that you could have gotten it right?
Oh yes,
because I mean, like, there are plenty of working peregrine falcons and goshawks, and if you'd really wanted to, like, subtly underline the point that this guy was high status, you could have given him a gyr falcon, because those were, like, only typically had by, like, royals and people of very high status, right? You could have just put in the right bird, right? All of those are, like, especially peregrines, widely available as, like, working birds in the UK, right? I mean, we used to have at Southampton, there was a Harris hawk and a peregrine that they brought in to catch the pigeons, right?
Yes.
There's not, like, difficult to find.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like, I would expect maybe when they were getting those birds, they haven't consulted maybe the actual owners of the birds, like, maybe they would have possessed that historical knowledge.
I mean, I would be surprised if someone who was a falconer wasn't somewhat familiar with the history of the Harris hawk.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
It's a pretty well-known one.
That's what I'm saying.
They'd have a handler.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm saying, is, like, maybe they just didn't bother to listen to those people, like, it's a minor detail, but, like, in the same way, an argument would be like, oh, it's just, it's not a document or anything, but still I understand that there's a minor detail that could be easily addressed, and,
Yeah. And so there's a certain, admittedly very small and very pedantic section of your audience who will find this, like, disconcerting and throw them out of the experience. So it's like, attention to detail, people.
You know what? Like, now that we are studying these books in so much detail, the Octavius Butler's Xenogenesis, which we'll come back in a second, I feel like when the Amazon series is gonna come out, both of us are gonna be like, nope, you got this wrong. Nope, this is not how it was. Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that. Who knows if it actually will come out, because like these things, it takes a while, and it's very unclear. Like they can die at basically any point in the production pipeline. So, and that was a little while back, so it may or may not ever make it through. But yeah, I'm a little concerned about what they might do with an adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I do hope that it's going to be, it's going to follow closely the book. Because honestly, like, you don't have to dramatize in any way. You don't have to make it in any weird, just follow on the books. They're perfectly fine as they are. But let's see.
Well, I mean, you do have to make some, like, it requires translating into a new medium, so they have to take a certain amount of license. It's just a question of whether or not they have anyone who actually has an appreciation for the hard sci-fi aspects of the work and is interested in translating those. Because I suspect, especially in the sort of current the current zeitgeist, I doubt they'll have someone with that degree of focus on that aspect of it. They'll be interested in translating some of the sort of more political messages, and they will probably do so at the expense of the sort of accuracy. But who knows? Like, maybe I'm being pessimistic.
No, please don't do that. Contact us. Listen, we are the man you can contact about. We'll keep everything in check. Come on, let's do it. Don't put any political nonsense. There's no need. Like, there's already politics in the book.
It's a very political. It's got a lot of important politically relevant aspects to the narrative. It's just like, but my point is, you don't have to sacrifice some of the technical accuracy that in order to convey those messages. In fact, the accuracy helps you convey those messages well, because it anchors them to reality.
Yes, absolutely.
If you start trying to detach them from the underpinnings, then things get unclear, and it's
yes,
and it gets less useful as an analogy, because it ceases to be strongly analogous to the world in which we actually live. But okay.
Well, anyway,
nerd rant over.
Yes. So back to Xenogenesis, Chapter 1, Part 2. Right? Let's get on with the predictions. It was great, honestly. I love that you spotted something so little. It's fantastic. So, in my prediction in Chapter 1, I thought that we'll see the journey Akin survived going to the human village with his captors, and at some point maybe one of them realizes like that there's something different with the boy, but I missed the mark. It's the chapter does one. It's not the Chapter 1 that does it. It's Chapter 2.
Yeah, it takes a minute before we get to that stage.
Yeah, in Chapter 1 we have still Tino, the story of Tino.
Yeah, although we're almost in Dishan's perspective initially, which is unusual.
Yeah. This is interesting because we are told, like, we're shown a bit more also about the growth of the larvae, the ship larvae.
Yeah.
But anyway, so should we start then with the summary?
Yeah, let's do that.
So, Chapter 1 starts with Dichan and the description of the law, of what exactly it is and its growth. Dichan, at the time of as the story starts, was at an oxbow lake, manipulating the low entity, the ship, the village that the story was taking place, from trying to engulf the lake and all the living beings in it. As Dichan describes it, Lo was going to take up all the nutrients, and even with help, it would not be able to be taught to provide the animals with what they need to eat and survive. The only useful thing it could provide at that point of time was oxygen. But as it was, Lo was changing, moving to the next stage of growth where it could incorporate the Earth's vegetation to itself, sustain it and benefit from it. On its own, it could learn slowly how to do it, and in the process, kill most of the beings. But with the help of the Oankali, the process would be without any sacrifices and progress in much, much faster way.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Sort of growing out into the surrounding environment and kind of selecting for anything that it can keep alive on it, but in conventional evolutionary sense of just killing everything that doesn't work.
Yeah, like, it's just like an evolution, basically. That doesn't work, that doesn't work, okay, this works, and then continue it on. But like, it's interesting that it's like a, how would you even describe it in terms of on Earth, like a aspect?
I mean, maybe something like a climate change type scenario.
Yeah,
where
it's
you've got
like it's basically like an ecosystem in a way that, if it's if things, there's a change in ecosystem, things have to balance itself out, right? But
or like a border between two biomes shifting, like in desertification or in something like that, right?
Yes.
Where you've got a shift going on.
Yeah. Very interesting the fact that starting from a larvae planted in Earth, and then becoming this village that basically eats everything that would try to intrude in its territory, but while camouflaging itself. And now it's going to, on the next stage of growth, where it can incorporate and live in a sort of symbiotic stage, instead of being parasitic. Now it's symbiotic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very interesting concept. A very cool way of building a spaceship. Right?
Yeah, it's really interesting way. A very novel, I would say, different to what one would be expecting from a alien species.
Mm-hmm.
So as Tichan made his way out of the water, he heard the cry, and then as he was listening, he wondered what happened in the air while he was in the water. When he heard the cry again, he ran towards it as fast as he could, making his sensory tentacles flat against the body to reduce any damage from the flora and fauna on its way. He could smell Akin and Tina, as well as some strange men, as he approached that area where we left off last episode.
I think it's where Akin was left. Where Tina was left, kind of potentially dying. Mm-hmm. And I think there was an interesting little thing that Dishan thought while he was kind of going through this, leaving the lake and finding Tino.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I'll just read this quote. He had been born to work with a human male parallel, to help raise children with the aid of such a person, and yet he had to limp along without this essential other. How were children to learn to understand the human male of themselves, a side they all possessed, whatever their eventual sex? It's kind of interesting that that Dishan has this perception of Tino as like contributing another component to the family group, right? Providing another kind of model for the children to learn about how their own psychology and biology, which I thought it was an interesting facet. And we'd kind of previously been considering the relationships as just being like focusing on three people in the kind of conventional Oankali context, where you have a male, female, and an uloi. But the trade families are kind of, they're different still, right? They're not even a 3-person group, they're kind of a 5-person unit, because you've got like a male and female of each species plus an uloi.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting that like we finally see that it's not anymore. It's pretty crazy when you think about 5 family group, like 5 parents to help to understand, help the child to understand its biology, right? The alien and the human biology. It's interesting that he felt that that for the years that have passed since Joseph's death, and the fact that Lilith did spend some time with Victor, but not that long. It seems that Dichan felt very, very left alone to his him trying to help the Lilith's children, their children, to understand their human parts, the male human parts.
Sort of lacking a counterpart.
Yes,
which is an interesting thing for him to be feeling.
Yeah, and I think this thought happens when he finally reaches Tino, when he finds Tino and he's concerned about Tino's health. So as the book goes, when he reached the place where he was running with the smell and the shout, he couldn't see Tino at first or Akin, but quickly locating him under a tree. And his body was twitching, Tino's body was twitching, and when Dichan brought him, Tino was dying. He had brain damage that Dichan could not heal, but Nikan sure could. And I think the thoughts when, like the possibility of Tino dying, well, finally he had a male to help to take care of the kids and, accepting them no matter whatever, Tino was not happy with, but still accepting the children that's what he was worried about. So he stopped the internal bleeding and found that Tino's skull was caved in, and that was also something for Nikanj to fix. And once Tino was stable, Dichan left him and went to the edge of Lo to one of the pseudo trees and struck it several times in the code of pressures that would be diverted to everyone in Lo. He could smell that the humans passed over the river, so they needed to be chased because Akin was nowhere to be found and they would lose track of them very soon. And the chapter 1 ends with Dichan worrying about Akin. Will they hurt him? Will they hurt him if they realize how intelligent he is?
That's interesting, the sort of way in which he signals this. It seems like the low entity is capable of communicating some kind of alarm back to everyone on it.
Yeah, so, using those pressures on that tree, that the whole body would then, of that entity, would spread it to everyone. So everybody who can understand, basically all the Oankali, definitely, maybe the constructs as well, would feel those warning signs and be able to transmit them. So I guess the message was straight to Nikanj, be like, get your ass here quickly because, we're in dire need of someone to be able to
presumably
heal him. Yeah. I wonder, actually, just off note, I wonder, like, if Oankali do have, like, swear words and, like, conversation, like...
Yeah, and actually it's quite interesting. In this section, we hear, like, Deshan just says that, you ran to a place and so on. I don't think we've ever really seen the Oankali, like,
run
flustered.
Yeah.
They don't really do that.
Yeah, like, just, the thing is, I always imagined the Oankali to be, like, I don't know, how do I describe it? Like, one-piece body, like, not having arms, really, or, like... how I describe it, like, how I imagine it, like... popsicle head, like, no, like they have one continuous body of a slug and then tentacles coming from their body. I imagine, like, what's from the Doctor Who, those, like, those robots that kill everything? What's their...
the Daleks.
Yeah, Daleks. Yeah, basically, I imagine them like that, but organic. Basically, they don't have really limbs. They have, like, those protrusions, right? But they're like one continuous body, right? This is like cone-shaped bodies, and I imagine them like being. So it's like running is like. Do they have limbs? Like, yeah, I still cannot imagine properly how would the Oankali look like.
We don't really get much discussion of their legs, like their arms and their tentacles are discussed kind of a lot, but we don't really get much talk of legs.
Yeah, so I was just like, I mean, I saw some pictures of, like, people imagining how they look like, and for example, I think in the book 1, the picture of I think it's Nikanj, although initially I thought it was Chitaya, but I think it was Nikanj, like, and Lilith's on the front cover. So in a way, there is, like, sort of the body shown, but I always still imagine them, like, being, like, basically cones. But anyway, that's just off topic. I thought that I share my imagination of Dalek-like Oankali.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about what they actually look like, because you don't always explicitly kind of represent them as a picture, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, the constructs are very well described. Some have gray skin. Most of them, they look like human-like, but they have some extra parts on their body, or their skin is different, something, similar. But the Oankali are never really well described. Like, the alienness is still preserved, for our imagination.
Yeah, I think that may well be a deliberate choice to some degree, to leave a certain amount of ambiguity in the description, just to let you fill in your own gaps.
Yes, yeah. So, my chapter 2 prediction is the same as for chapter 1. Basically, I completely missed the mark, but I think this is where we hit, Akin's perspective, and if anything happens to him, or what will they do? So
yes, so I think your predictions are a bit closer for the second chapter, right?
yeah, a bit, yeah.
They do start a little bit to appreciate that he's not quite what he perhaps seems externally to be.
To be fair, I need to rant about this chapter a bit later on, because I got a bit confused. Well, not confused. I got a bit annoyed with the behavior of the humans in it, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to be annoyed with the behavior of the humans.
Yeah,
in this
but
chapter.
in the same time, I'll explain what's the problem when we get to it.
Okay then.
The chapter 2 starts with Akin's perspective. The humans were swimming in a narrow canoe. Canoe? What's the pronunciation? Canoe upriver, rowing in pairs to quickly get out of the range of flow. At the beginning, Akin would try to scream as loud as far and for as long as possible. Eventually, got tired. No, he was just a child. Also, the man who caught him once dangled him by his feet and threatened him to dunk him in the river if he did not stay quiet. So that was another reason.
Yeah.
Akin was terrified of the man, broad, bearded, red face, bitter, angry face. And the man held Akin disgustingly, as if boy was a snake or an alien. So
is it just throughout the section, these people clearly have no idea how you're supposed to hold a baby?
Yeah. So I feel like they really didn't think it through when they stole Akin.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's just they're dangling by a leg, and then picking him up by an arm, and it's holding him underneath an arm. Yeah. It's okay, what are you doing?
Especially Akin was only 1 year old, right?
Yeah.
So his skull bones wouldn't have fused completely as of yet.
Yeah, I think not.
Then so there'll still be very soft, because human skulls develop differently to the rest of the body's bones, right? It's called the intramembranous bone, where basically it doesn't start from cartilage. It's just a tissue that becomes calcifies over time, whereas bones in the rest of our bodies, like long bones, for example, they start as a collagen bones, very soft, but then they start to deposit the collagen matrix. It's a bit different. I know it sounds similar, but it's slightly different.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that they didn't start with or didn't sort of go through a cartilaginous intermediate.
No. The skull doesn't. It's very similar, because everything has to have some collagenous basis, but it's the cells that are there that actually calcify. But anyway, it's a very similar process, but it's different. It's different enough to be separated anatomically. So I would say that dangling him and everything, and then dropping him at some point in the chapter is not a good for the child. Really not good. Even Akin points out, who drops a child?
Yeah. So do they normally treat human babies like this? Because if so, I'm amazed they're alive.
Yeah. Without any permanent brain damage. That's why, for example, interesting fact, why some cultures, the skulls recovered from the baby skulls, people thought initially they were alien, because the shape of the head is just so moldable initially. So if you drop or if you put them in a specific molds, like wooden molds, you could literally make the skull grow in very, very specific shape. So it's you have to be careful with a baby's head, very, very careful. But anyway, with time, Akin finally fell asleep, just to wake up with water splashing on his face. It was raining hard and the canoe was catching water. Akin thought that if it gets bad enough, eventually they'll have to stop. But as he looked at the riverbanks, he saw full of vegetation, high eroding cliffs, something absent and low. Well, obviously, because the low was just eating everything. Eventually, the men gave up on rowing and went ahead to the riverbank, and they did not make it fully to the shore before the canoe sank. This is an extract from the book. The men cursed and jumped out to pull the boat onto a broad mud flat, while Akin stayed where he was, all but swimming. They dumped the boat, tipping both him and the water over one side, laughing when he slid along the mud. Like, honestly, you don't treat a child like this. Like, what? Like, literally a 1-year-old child, and you just dump it and just let it slide. Like, if it wasn't any normal child, it would be seriously bruised up. Like, wow. Yeah, and then here, one of them grabbed Akin by a leg and asked in order to babysit him, but an argument broke, and eventually Akin was kept under the watch of the terrifying man. Like, grabbed by the leg? Like, God, this... Yeah. The men needed to find shelter because of the rain. Kept pouring and the night was approaching. Akin was held by the man, sleeping in the mud, but when they reached a more sure-foot path, the man told Akin to walk by himself. You know, at the time, Akin was thinking like, if he was mature enough, we could probably escape them by breathing underwater. But as it was, he wasn't able because he was too young.
But like, again, a 1-year-old, like, he's walking through a jungle. Like, they're usually not exactly like, straightforward terrain.
Yeah. So this is another beef I have with this chapter, and I don't know, like, what those people were thinking, because he was a child, and I know Akin started slowly to get behind the men, right? And with the increasing distance, he was growing more and more frightened. He fell several times and eventually, exhausted, just stopped following them altogether. He found some leaves that were edible, although the good stuff, as he described, was way above where he could reach. He thought of Tino, that he did not know much about the forest plants. Tino would only eat the obvious things that people grew in Phoenix. If a thing didn't look familiar, he would not touch it. Akin was eating some of special nutritious grey fungus when he heard one of the men coming back for him.
To be fair to Tino, that is probably an excellent policy.
No, honestly, to Tino's credit, it makes sense to, like, not trying to eat leaves of a plant if you don't know what it is, and it potentially could kill you. Akin, this is excerpt from the book, he swallowed quickly, muddied one hand deliberately, and wiped it over his face. If he were simply dirty, the men would pay no attention, but if only his mouth was dirty, they might decide to try to make him throw up. That's a really smart approach to this whole thing, like the fact that he could eat and then, without their knowledge, just in case. Yeah,
it's a clever little deception to, we keep seeing the kind of emphasis that we're putting on his intelligence, and even in these kind of like socially complex situations where he's got to try and model these other people and what they might do, is doing really well at sort of guessing what they might do and what they might think.
Yeah,
and adjusting accordingly.
Yeah. So the man cursing went and grabbed Akin and brought him to the shelter where the other men were building. They found a relatively dry place well protected by the forest canopy and swept it clean. They stretched latex sealed cloth from a pair of small trees to the ground. Now they were preparing the flooring. Akin thought that at least they were not planning to sleep in the mud. For a strange reason, though, they didn't build fire and sat down to eat some dry fruits and nuts and drink alcohol. They gave Akin to try some, but after realizing what it was, he would not touch it again. Like, they give a kid drink alcohol, like, holy balls. I mean, honestly, this is like literally barbarians. Like, you like, I don't know.
I mean, like, if you had a baby that was making noise, it used to be relatively common practice to just, like, get a little bit of spirit on your finger and, like, put it on the gums.
Well, I mean, yes, and also I've heard stories like, mothers, when they were breastfeeding, they were suggested to drink alcohol, to the alcohol transferred to the baby so that, sleeps better. It's just, wow, honestly, like, the fact that those practices were suggested is just, it's unbelievable, like.
And not long ago. I mean,
yeah.
It worked, kind of.
I mean, I mean, to be fair, to give credit to circumstances that they are in the book, whatever, water might be not drinkable because of parasites. The alcohol is the only way to really survive.
Yeah, although it's that works for mead at a few percent to keep the stuff away. Yes. But if you're drinking spirits, it's not going to help you with your hydration.
Yes, that's correct. But yeah, I hope that they're drinking something similar to concentration of beer or something as nice. Because I mean, in medieval times, kids would be given like very, very diluted alcohol because water wasn't drinkable. So it's understandable, right? The time that like drinking alcohol was necessary. And I think I read a story. Was it London or when there was some outbreak, and basically there was a brewery that only the workers from the brewery did not get sick because they were only drinking the alcohol. But I don't remember what.
Yeah, that's the famous cholera outbreak with the I'm spacing on the doctor's name. With the water pump, but that was because the brewery had a separate water supply rather than because they were drinking.
Oh, really? I thought it was the alcohol. Okay,
just the beer. But I mean, some of them were also just mainly drinking the beer, but they also had a separate water supply so that they for making as the input to the brewing process. But yeah.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for clarifying. I thought it was basically mostly alcohol that was the reason behind.
Yeah, but it was definitely a widespread thing. Like, I think mead was one of the popular ones because if you're drinking the water, then dysentery and various other waterborne diseases were a serious problem. So it was a better bet.
Yeah. Man, honestly, those times. A conversation, and this is where my beef starts with the chapter. So, a conversation started between the men, discussing the boy, wondering if he can eat hard food, and thinking about Tino and what he had to do to have a baby. He put a clip from the book.
Yeah, so in this point, there's a little exchange between the two where one of them says, "You know what you did. If you didn't know, you wouldn't. You would have died of old age or disease by now." And this seems to suggest that one of the men has had the Uloi treatment, as it were. He's been subjected to their seductions, yes. I would guess.
Yeah.
And seems to be being judged for it by the others.
Honestly, And then the men wonder what would they get for the boy. But as they were discussing, some of them men started to get agitated, saying that kidnapping the child will bring them nothing but misfortune. It's better to leave Akin to someone and escape before the Oankali find them. Akin went to take care of his needs at the time, and surprisingly the men didn't stop him from wandering, but always kept an eye on him as he was walking around. The men continued to wander and argue about Akin, sounding more and more ominous. That scared Akin, but the fear could not keep him awake. After a while, he was relieved that maybe they will trade him to someone in Phoenix, hopefully Tino's parents.
So I think this is the point where they kind of they notice he's probably a little bit more intelligent than they might have guessed before, because he comes back from having relieved himself with a bunch of palm leaves to make a bed for himself, which is a little bit of a giveaway. I'm kind of surprised he did that. I thought he might try and keep playing it a bit more helpless.
Yes, but yes, absolutely. Yeah. So let's finish this off, and I'll tell you what my problem in the chapter is. After some time passed, Akin awoke to find someone holding him and someone else trying to feed him something. He knew that the men were drunk, and what he felt was beans that were deadly if eaten. To fight back, Akin tried to shout, but the other men were hard asleep, so in desperation, Akin vomited on the intruding hand. The man jumped back, cursing, and then falling over one of the sleeping men. The chaos ensued, and in the terrifying confusion, Akin escaped to the outside, fleeing into the forest. He was scared. The forest was dangerous, but what really frightened Akin was being alone, and the chapter ends with Akin missing Lilith. So, I have the beef with this chapter, serious beef with this chapter. We have a group of men that are supposed to go and kidnap the kid. Okay, cool, fair enough. They did it several times. But halfway through the journey back, they're like, you know what? Let's kill the kid because they're gonna get in trouble for kidnapping him. What fucking logic is this? you've already kidnapped the kid, right? So you might as well just bring him to the village, and Oankali eventually will just steal him by. Like, you could literally just, do that. No, I know what'll gonna make the situation better. Let's pretend it never happened by killing the kid. It's like, are you for real? Like, what brainlets have they literally been like for doing this? Like, my goodness, like, is there nobody intelligent among the resistors? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so these guys do seem almost unreasonably dense, right? It's just like, almost implausibly idiotic.
I just
behavior.
felt like, I don't know, either Octavia Butler was made him purposely this retarded, or it was just particularly this group of people, and they were just being sent around because nobody wanted them in the villages because they're that stupid. But like, whatever the situation is, I just cannot understand the sheer imbeciles they are. Like, what the hell? Like, I was reading this, I was just thinking to myself, okay, they're arguing about what to do with the kid. Okay, understandable. And then one of them is like, oh, this is gonna bring us more trouble. And it's like, what the hell have you been doing so far? Why did you go even to the village in the first place if it was going to cause more trouble? And like, is it the peer pressure that you're afraid that your colleague's gonna laugh at you? It's like, mate, like, seriously.
I mean, they did have the kind of the scheme to get rid of him, right? Was like to sell him to another village and then Scarpa before the Oankali would catch up with them and cause trouble, right? It's still a little unclear to me why exactly the village would want to buy a child that would almost be guaranteed to bring the Oankali down on them when that's what they don't want.
So this is another thing, right? Like, sell to what village? Like a resistor village, right?
Presumably,
yeah. Right? Because if I was thinking, like, are they gonna go sell it in Oankali village? It's like, are they? But like, yeah, it has to be a human village, right? But then they knew that like the Oankali will sooner or later come in and collect the child. It's like, who nowadays would want to buy a child knowing that the Oankali will come back and collect it? Like, it's inevitable. Like, come on, like, it happened several times, and I mean, even Akin says that this happened many times, and they collected them back like every single time. What is? I honestly,
presumably they're just banking on the desperation of the some of the inhabitants of the villages to have kids that they will be willing to take on the risk despite the fact that it's never worked before.
So, but then again, like in the book, it says like, oh, I wonder what we could get for him. Maybe few resources, or maybe a woman or two. Is like slavery as well nowadays. Add slavery to this is like, what are they gonna exchange like women in the village for the child? Like, what is this logic? Like, oh my, like, is this seriously the setup of the war? Like, I don't know, like whether Octavia Butler's like really went on and beyond just to make them look idiotic, or is there something wrong with this chapter in general? Or I don't know, I'm getting too agitated about it.
I don't know. I mean, it does definitely feel like this was almost a little bit overblown on the degree of stupidity that these guys are exhibiting. But I mean, I don't know. It's humans are kind of complicated, right? I have encountered stupid shit in the real world, and I have also encountered much more reasonable stuff, right? So like most people are not this idiotic, but you hear stories about people who are definitely this idiotic. So it's like, is it actually unrealistic? I don't know.
You know what this reminds me of? Of old Western like stories or books, or like basically stories where you had like these people who would, I don't know, kidnap some people and then be like, yeah, we're gonna sell this child for like in the next next town over to, and then like the money used for like gambling or something like that, like, or like things like that, right? Like that sort of like people when they're like Wild West, where some of them traveling around and they're just basically like most of them were idiots because they couldn't stay long enough in a place because they did something stupid or something like those lines. Like, I don't know whether it was the actual people like that or it's just whatever the reason was. These men I don't know. Like, I swear, if I was like, I don't know, a leader of a village or something, I would definitely send them away from the village to do things because I would not be able to cope with them.
Yeah. Well, this is probably why they
yes.
are where they are.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I feel like nobody wants them
no
around.
one else wants them.
And the problem is they have weapons. Like, you give an idiot a weapon, and I'm sure there's something awful's gonna happen. And, like, it did happen to Tino. It's like, the moment they were given guns, like, it's... honestly.
Yeah. So this, this whole chapter definitely makes you very frustrated and hostile towards the this particular group of men, because they clearly have no idea how to handle a baby. Their whole plan is completely and utterly inconsistent and makes very little sense.
It just makes no sense. Like they come to a village of the Oankali village. They meet Tino. They recognize him, and there's a kid with him. They know what's gonna happen. And then one of those morons does an impulsive thing and just hits Tino. Right. The guy who was arguing probably in that group saying that gonna get in trouble was like, it was too much in shock to realize what the hell did the guy just do. And then they just grab the kid because, in the whole adrenaline fueled situation, you do stupid things. And then when they finally sat down and relaxed, and alcohol came added to the equation, suddenly this man started coming up with like Einstein level of ideas. Oh yeah, let's just leave the kid now. It's like, or maybe let's sell him. Oh yeah, I know what's the best solution. Let's kill him. Is God that's gonna be like, it doesn't bring a wrath of the Oankali, an alien species that can find them anywhere?
Yeah. On the point about them like trying to kill him with the poisonous beans, so I think one of them had said, like, I bet that even if we poisoned him, he wouldn't die. They're kind of like guessing what his like sort of abilities were. So maybe they weren't necessarily like actively trying to kill him. Maybe they were just like having almost like a drunken bet on whether or not he would die if they poisoned him. It's like
God, that's even more retarded.
I think it might be worse.
I swear.
Yeah.
God, what? Like, if that was the case, I swear, like, I would honestly just keep those men out of the village. Like, just send them, I don't know, to I don't know if like whatever they're doing, like just away for like, I know, cutting wood or whatever, and just make them stay away as long as possible from the place where you live, because God, it's just not possible to live around people like that.
Yeah, this is a criminally dangerous level of idiocy.
Wow.
Oh dear.
Honestly, wow.
Yep. Well, yeah. so that
and today on
more or less wraps
what
up
grind
our,
Michael's gears. Yeah.
Yep. Akin's now just like alone, wandering in the forest, trying to avoid being eaten by caimans and anacondas and stuff.
And the only thing that actually scares him is being alone, because just. To be honest, like I admire the kid, because like I would be just scared to be near the man, because their stupidity could make you, at any point like just do something really bad. And being alone, I think at this point is probably the best thing that would happen to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's more or less what was going through his head at the end, right? It's like these guys are just too unpredictable. I'm out. I'll take my chances with the jungle.
Yep. Absolutely.
No, and fair enough, to be honest.
Honestly, it's just I don't know. Like maybe let's go for my chapter 3 predictions, because I really don't know what's gonna happen next. Like I thought that maybe like the men, the whole situation is like, like the chaos that ensued after this whole one jumping into the fire accidentally, realized that Akin is gone, so they tried to find him. But maybe Akin manages to escape them. Although, him being a kid, like maybe he won't be able to run away far enough, but someone else finds him, maybe someone from Phoenix. I don't know, like that's just, maybe they're close enough to the village. Whatever the situation is, someone will maybe find him, but like I just cross my fingers and keep my thumbs just to call that he can escape from those idiots.
Yep, yeah, so it's a fairly chaotic ending, right? It's he's off and they're in a shambles.
To be fair, I'm surprised that like one of the sleeping men, when they were like awakened by the man falling to the fire, didn't fire off the gun just because, like it's just like really.
Actually, it's a question I haven't really thought of that much, but I'm not sure what level of sophistication they have with their firearms.
Some pipe guns.
I don't know if
like some sort of like metal pipe and then some wooden parts. That's it. Like I wouldn't say anything more sophisticated than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of like, do they have an actual like breech loading weapon, or are they still doing like muzzle loading with like smooth barrel type muskets? And then what are they doing for ignition? Right? Is this like are we talking like matchlock type thing, or have we got to the point where we've got actual like, you know, properly like brass jacketed rounds and stuff? Because like, there's a big like the whole evolution of the history of firearms is quite a lot of steps to recapitulate. I mean, you could probably with relatively crude tools. I mean, if you did a forged barrel for your rifling and had a polygonal rifle rather than a milled one, then you can probably make a forged barrel rifled weapon, so you get much more accuracy. And it wouldn't be too difficult. I mean, depending on your level of
the problem is the
sophistication
tools.
With the chemistry, you could.
I think though, Richard, the problem is that we have to think about that all the tools were taken from the humans, unless they found the cache with guns right in south somewhere. But I guess if we think about it, it has to be something related to like very basic blacksmithing.
But so that's what I'm saying. So to some degree, you might be able to pull off a rifled barrel if you make a forged rifled barrel. So what you do is you make a mandrel that's like a hexagon and turned at the appropriate rate for a rifle, and then you forge a barrel around the mandrel instead of machining out a rifle the way that they do in modern weapons. That was how they used to do rifling if you get like antique shotguns, they still have the same thing. That's where that, you know, the cartoon image of like the banana peel shotgun, that comes from forged barreled
I see
shotguns. So in theory, that with relatively crude stuff, they could make rifle barreled stuff using forging around a mandrel. But yeah, getting a solid firing mechanism is more tricky, and getting that reliable. Like, it's a question of like how sophisticated they are with the chemistry mostly, and also like the machining for the tooling. But if they can get to like a percussion cap type weapon, that's going to be a lot more reliable than if they're doing just like loose black powder type stuff.
Yeah, I mean
that's a real pain to keep, especially if
rain,
they were just in that really wet.
Yeah, I mean at the point when they were like
that's not gonna. Yeah,
because at the point when they fell in the river, probably most of the gunpowder, if it was loose gunpowder, would get wet. They would, in a way, they would have to come up with a way to make bullets, but then chemistry requires to make gunpowder, so they would need sulfur, find some sulfur mines. Then they would have to find saltpeter, charcoal, all of that. So I
mean, and for the to get to the point where you can have a percussion type weapon, you need some mercury or silver fulminate to make those little things that you get that like the little caps that you throw at the ground, they go bang. Those are usually silver fulminate. But you can, so that same principle is what the shock sensitive explosive, that's what they use for percussion caps. But then there's the step between, like it would be a lot easier from the machining perspective to make a percussion cap type weapon where you still have a kind of like a loose black powder chamber at the back, rather than having a fully enclosed modern style brass jacketed one where the explosive payload and the bullet are in one place, and you've got a little like a copper percussion cap with the silver nitrate or whatever in it that you strike is one payload. But that's a lot more precise machining. Although actually, before they did the ones with the percussion caps on the back of the round, the way you do in the modern weapons, they had edge-based ones where they put the shock-sensitive explosive in like the crimping around the base of the bullet, and before that they had pin-shaped ones where there was actually a physical pin that was outside of the base of the round, and you struck it and it like moved into the round and set off the shock-sensitive explosive. So those different iterations of it they kind of evolved from the pin to the pinching version of the base of the round all the way up to the modern one where you've got a separate little shock sensitive point on the back. But and they represent like increasing levels of machining sophistication as you get from one to the other. But it's that would be a lot more tricky to manufacture without a much better machine shop than they're likely to have at this point.
The question then comes from the fact then like maybe the Oankali haven't cleared out everything from the previous from the post-war or pre-war buildings or items, right? Maybe they found something that helped them, like, but who knows, like with the time that passed, because they created glass windows and stuff like that, maybe they had the time to develop the machines necessary for those things to at least some certain degree, right? So
yeah, I mean it's probably still spun glass type windows, right? I mean, because back in the day when you did glass panes, they were small, right? Yes. They were a few inches in diameter, and they usually had a circular pattern on them because you basically just spun a piece of glass on the end of a glass blowing type stick. Yeah. But so getting from that to float glass, where you've got actual large window panes, that's a whole other different level of manufacturing sophistication. So they're probably still on the old plate, the little. It's not plate. What's the word for it? I can't remember now. But the little like spun type glass panes.
Yeah.
But it's it'd be interesting to know a bit more about that, because we really don't have any details other than like it's some wood with a metal tube, so we don't have any idea what level of sophistication their firearms are at.
Yeah, true. I wonder if we will, like, probably at some point, it's probably more very future prediction, is that in future we'll probably find out the more about the Southerners, like the Southern resistor groups, because these seems to be like the first one to have guns and everything. So there has to be someone who's very, very much on the level of knowledge on those aspects that can help people to actually develop those things, and then engineering knowledge of those things. So who knows?
No. So Octavius is not living up to the international stereotype of Americans as gun obsessives.
Yeah.
We need more detail.
More details. It's imperative that we know the manufacturing of the guns at this point, because otherwise we cannot immerse ourselves.
Well, we don't know the level of technical capability. There's a big difference between how long it takes you to reload and how well you can handle different weather conditions, depending on the way your firearms are made. Anyway.
But it's just finishing this off. Like, we know that how many years have passed? 30?
Between
the book 1 and book 2. I think we came to conclusion 30
thereabouts.
years, right? Because
about 30 years.
Initially I thought it was like 7-8 years, but it was actually 30 years. So in 30 years, with enough like motivation, I feel like there would be quite a substantial, at least like creation of machines, certain machines and stuff like that, like windmills for electricity, and then maybe some generators at some point.
Yeah, I mean the main difficulty is the mineral exploitation.
Yeah,
that's right. Is it how do you get the raw materials? It's the same thing we talked about before about the material side of stuff, right? Maybe you could make a machine shop in that time, but only if you've got a decent source of steel. And that's...
unless because I know that we, at some point, Tino said that they would go scavenging, right? They'll go around. So there has to be some remnants. So potentially, maybe they found something?
Yeah, like a pre-war cache of purified metals would be a good starting point.
Potentially, or at least some sort of machines that they can basically reutilize their parts, basically.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess that's it for today, I guess.
Yes, yeah, we got a little bit
on a
tangent there at the end,
beginning and the end, yes. So everyone, thank you very much for listening. We are Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on xenothesis.com. I was Michael Klinko.
I was Richard Acton.
Bye. Goodbye.